Well, blood-based privilege sounds like something horrifying that we were supposed to forget about and bury from last century, and the fact that it's becoming more prevalent is a deep concern. I mean, I wonder, just listening to you there talk about it, I wonder how many activists for The Voice understand the similarities between the greatly maligned Indian caste system, where people believe that you deserve where you are because of a former life, versus the idea now that if you're born with a certain skin colour, you deserve to be disadvantaged because your ancestors may or may not have done something. I mean, this kind of belief is terrible, and it's so against everything that we learnt in the Enlightenment. But Ramesh, when you talked about this idea of, you know, oppression, is there a risk that Albanese is going to create in Australia a deep-seated resentment between different races? Because if you tell one race that they are responsible for all the ills in the world and that they're oppressors and they don't deserve to even have their history recognised, surely that will eventually have some kind of backlash.
It will, especially when it is demonstrably false. The biggest progress in human history in terms of life opportunities, in terms of educational outcomes, in terms of health outcomes, in terms of material prosperity, in terms of democratization of prosperity and health outcomes. We forget in feudal societies, Rousseau's famous definition of life being nasty, brutish, and short applied to the 90% of the masses, but not to the tiny minority. That's what we are going to go back to. All that flew from the Enlightenment values and from the Industrial Revolution. So between the commitment to net zero and this sort of decolonization, we are bent on reversing the progress that has been made, that has benefited all of human society the world over, which is why many are attracted to migrating at considerable risk often in terms of the leaky boats that they commandeer to come, that they want to come here. So it's demonstrably false and it is wrong in principle. And that's why I like this, I might write, in fact, on the distinction between the ethic of conviction and the ethic of consequences. But one other thing that I would be interested in doing as a follow-up for the Spectator itself, which is suggested by something you just said, and that is, you have the original idea come from the idealists who romanticize indigenous life in a way that bears no relationship to reality on the ground in remote communities. They conceptualize the new proposal in terms of their idealism because they are doing it as a feel-good factor in terms of virtuous intentions. They react with hostility to suggestions that just because you want to do good, doesn't mean that the proposal will actually do good. But then it gets through, whatever the proposal might be, and that element of social justice is now embedded in our laws and even worst case scenario in the Constitution. Then you get the follow-up, and that's where the activists come in. And they then begin to weaponize what is now entrenched in law and the Constitution. They will take it to the court if they are disregarded. They will take it to the court if they're not given everything they ask for. They will be followed by the next generation of activists who make even more radical demands and dismiss the previous generation as old fogies who were not, who didn't go far enough. So Martin Luther King is not anymore a hero of racial progress. And then that is followed in the next generation by people who begin to monetize their new privileges. And we've seen a foretaste of that in WA with the demand for $2.5 million in order to plant trees. And this begins to have fuel a major resentment and backlash, and ends up entrenching not just divisions, but bitterness between the communities. So I think just because there is goodwill in the start from the proponents doesn't mean it will not be abused later on. And we've seen that again and again. And then you get a political class that depends for its continued hold on power on exploiting this and fomenting further divisions and divisiveness. We've seen this repeatedly in many places in the world. I'm yet to see this particular movie end with a happy ending.